Good morning, and thank you for attending our webinar today, Diversity in the Creative Sector. We're going to go ahead and begin now. My name is Natalie Villa, and I just wanted to let you know that should you have any questions, you can go ahead and throw those in the chat window, and we'll try and get to all of them today. If for some reason we aren't able to get to your questions, we'll just follow up with you directly and also post those questions and answers in the blog once we post our final edit of this. So I am a project manager here at WestStaff, and I'm part of the Creative Vitality Suite team. I've worked at WestStaff now for 6 years and have been part of the CVSuite team for 3. With CVSuite, I assist in general account information, content management, and help on the technology side. I'm joined today by the CVSuite team.
Hello everyone, my name is Samantha Ortega. I am the Administrative Assistant here at WestStaff and part of the Creative Vitality Suite team. I currently manage some of the CVSuite's content marketing and social media and have been with the team for about 9 months now.
Hey everyone, my name is Kelly and I am the newest member of the WestStaff team. I started here in May and I just moved back to Colorado in the fall. As the business coordinator, my role here is to manage account communications and contracts. I'm your main contact for CVSuite, and if we haven't gotten a chance to connect yet, I'm sure we will in the future, and I'm excited to be here.
For those of you who are not familiar with the Western States Arts Federation, also known as WestStaff, we are a nonprofit regional arts organization for the 13 Western states where we implement policy, programming, advocacy, and technology solutions for the arts. We also host several technology products which include Zapplication, Call for Entry, Public Art Archive, GoSmart, and the Creative Vitality Suite. We recently hired a new executive director. His name is Christian Gain, who has been a wonderful addition to the WestStaff staff, and we are excited to enhance and grow within the next couple of months. The Creative Vitality Suite includes both for-profit and non-profit data. The tool allows users to create and customize their definition of the creative economy by choosing from 98 industry codes and 85 occupation codes. Users can also choose from 4 types of workers. This includes full-time, part-time, self-employed, and extended proprietors. For those of you who don't know what extended proprietors are, this includes people who earn money from the creative economy as a secondary income, for instance, like photographers. Our data comes from national sources through our partner MZ, also known as the Economic Modeling Specialist International. CVSuite includes data from 2011 to 2017. We recently updated our data to include the most accurate data for 2017. We will be updating again in the fall to add the 2018 year data. Users can create and save state MSA, also known as Metropolitan Statistical Area, counties, and zip code regions.
So today's webinar will be focusing on the demographic data. The CVSuite demographic data includes race and ethnicity data, gender, and age. We're going to dive deeper into the race and ethnicity data in the CVSuite today. If we have time, we will have an open discussion towards the end of the webinar where we can share and discuss any current work with the CVSuite and ask questions. We will explain in many ways what you can use, how you can use the data and tool to understand the demographic makeup of your region and within the region's creative economy. Some key takeaways for our webinar today include what creative occupation is the most diverse in my region. Has the diversity of the creative economy improved or declined in the last 3 years? What areas of the creative sector do we need to improve in terms of racial and ethnic diversity? When looking at the entire state, how does my city or zip code region compare to another in terms of diversity in the creative sector?
So in this example, we're really going to be focusing on the San Jose MSA and the Nashville MSA for data year 2017. So before we begin, we're going to just define some key terms to make sure that we're all on the same page as we're discussing. First, so let's, what is the creative economy? Here within our tool, we allow you, like Sam said, to customize your definition of the creative economy. There are various definitions for the creative economy. Today, we're going to actually be focusing our analysis on the arts and entertainment industries and occupations for all classes of workers. So another key thing that we're going to be discussing are industry jobs and occupation jobs. So industry jobs refers to both the creative and non-creative jobs within the creative industry. Occupation jobs refers to only your creative workforce, such as artists, dancers, and musicians. Another key difference that we want to kind of point out is earnings and sales. So earnings is the compensation paid to workers in a given industry, and sales represents the amount of goods and services sold in a given industry. Now, it's important to keep in mind that sales tend to appear larger than industry earnings and may not be the best indicator of impact. This is because those dollars may not stay within the region, whereas earnings are more likely to remain within the region because that's where the workers actually live. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the CVSuite tool. On this first section, this is our dashboard. On the right-hand side, you're going to see our region, which is the Nashville MSA, and our data year, which is 2017. For us to get to the demographic data, we're actually going to go to Data, within Data Sets, and then click on that demographic data. On this table, it provides a breakdown of race and ethnicity data in 3 ways for our region. So we have the actual region population, occupation jobs, and industry jobs. So, and within the tool, we can view these as values or percentages. So the value is going to just show us the number of people who identify as that specific race or ethnicity within the region, occupation, or industry. And that percentage is actually going to be the percentage of that job or of that or of the overall population actually that identify as that race or ethnicity.
To begin, we will explore the region's makeup to give us better insight into how diverse the region actually is. Here we can see that the racial and ethnic breakdown of the region you have selected. So here it is. So for the Nashville MSA, there are 290,745,000 people who identify as Black or African American, which makes up about 15% of Nashville's MSA's population. Not only can you explore the racial makeup, but you can see the gender and age breakdown. So in our example, women make up about 51% of the Nashville's MSA population. The largest age group within the Nashville MSA is ages 0 to 24, which make up about 33% of the region's population. Let's start with occupation jobs. We can see that Black or African Americans hold about 8% of creative occupations in the Nashville MSA. To see which occupations are more diverse, let's look at the breakdown of the racial and ethnic groups within the creative occupation. By clicking the header twice, we can sort the occupation breakdown in descending order. 18% of the music directors and composers, which is roughly about 250 jobs, in the Nashville MSA identify as Black or African American. The occupation with the most number of jobs, however, that are held by Black or African Americans is musicians and singers with a little over 1,200. You'll note that there are fewer musicians and composers overall, but of those jobs, more are held by Black or African Americans. The CVSuite tool is also a good way to benchmark yourself and see what may need improvement. For Nashville, of the 595 floral designers, only about 2% identify as Black or African American.
So one of the great things about CVSuite is all of the data can be downloaded as a spreadsheet for deeper analysis. So in order to do this, you would click the Excel icon to the right of the search box. The spreadsheet for this demographic data will include a breakdown of race and ethnicity, gender and age for industry jobs, occupation jobs, and the population. So we already downloaded this data for us in order to prep for the webinar. And what we thought, or what we did, is we're going to use this information to help evaluate how successful the diversity initiative is, understand the creative economy deeper, what improvements can be made, and how we're doing year over year. So we're just going to take a look at this data and kind of dive in a little bit deeper. So with this data, we kind of had done some already preliminary calculations. So we totaled all of the values for non-white ethnicities for occupations to help us get a better sense of how diverse our creative occupations are for the Nashville MSA. So here we can see that there are about 53,600 jobs, and about 9,300 are held by people of color or minorities, or about 17%. So 83% are held by people who identify as white. It's important to get the full picture when we're doing these types of analysis. So we're going to look at this compared to the region. the demographic makeup there. Compared to the region, we can see that there are about 28% of the region's population is comprised of minorities. So what does that mean? It means that the creative occupations are less diverse than the region. But does that mean that Nashville is more diverse or less than diverse than other regions? How are they doing compared to other things? So we're going to compare this to a little more diverse MSA than Nashville. So our pick is San Jose. So for San Jose, we can see that people of color make up about 68% of the population, while people of color account for about 37% of the creative occupations in the region. So if we're comparing them, we can see that San Jose, we're comparing Nashville, San Jose, Nashville is more diverse within the creative occupations as compared to their regional makeup. So let's say we wanted to dive in a little bit deeper and really focus on specific occupations, or see what occupations are the most diverse in Nashville and compare that again to San Jose. So we know overall the creative economy, but let's focus in on a little bit deeper. So here again, we have combined all the non-white races to see the percentage of jobs held by minorities. To do this, again, we added together all of the job counts for non-white races and ethnicities and divided by the total number of jobs for that SOC code. And then that kind of gave us our minority percentage for that occupation. So for Nashville MSA, we can see that the minorities hold about 30% of the dancer jobs within this region. The least diverse occupation is photographers, with about 7% held by people of color. So if we look at those same occupations and see what it's like compared for San Jose, we can see that minorities or people of color make up about 30% of the photographer jobs and about 52% of the dancer jobs. So within these specific occupations, San Jose is more diverse. You can continue to dive deep into specific occupations to gain a full understanding of the region and the creative occupations and industries. So this can be done not only for your specific occupations, but also within your industry code. One of the other great things about the CVSuite is that you have access to data back to 2011. So you can easily pull reports from the past 3 or 5 years to see trends. So we can kind of benchmark to see how we're moving along. So we went ahead and pulled the data from 2014 for the Nashville MSA. So looking at the Nashville MSA, we can see that the regional demographics have stayed pretty consistent, with minorities making up about 27% of the population. However, we can see that there has been growth in the occupations in terms of diversity. So the top screenshot shows the 2017 data, and the bottom one shows the 2014 data. So in 2014, minorities held about 8,200 creative occupations compared to the 9,300 in 2017. We can also jump into this again specifically into those specific occupations that we kind of already benchmarked. So this next slide focuses on the 2 occupations. So they're writers and authors and dancers. So in 2014, there were 286 jobs and dancer jobs. And of that, about 32% were held by minorities or people of color. So while in 2017, there were only 222 dancer jobs, of that, 37% were held by minorities and people of color. So we can see that the job number has gone down, but we have become more diverse within that job number. One of the other interesting data points that we found was about writers and authors. In 2014, this was the least diverse occupation, with about 10% of the 5,594 jobs being held by people of color or minorities. However, in 2017, minorities or people of color made up about 11% of the 6,463 writer and author jobs. So again, we can see that number of jobs increased, but so did that diversity. So it really was a show that occupation is growing, and so is the diversity within that occupation. So looking to the past data can be a great way to see how your region is growing, and you can also get a better idea of how, maybe compared to another region, it's not looking great, but you can compare yourself to a prior year and see how much you have grown in that region. Again, we have data all the way back to 2011.
Now that you have all this data, it's time to share it with your constituents. This can be legislators, members of the community, or members within your organization. Visualizations can make the data much more shareable and digestible. Using the examples above, we will go over easy visualizations you can create. So I'll go ahead and go into our Google Sheets. Since our data is in Google Sheets, we can easily create charts from the data listed. So using our data in columns E and F, we highlighted the breakdown of race and ethnicity by occupation. The red represents the minority population and the blue represents the white population per occupation. Let's create a graph by occupation and focus this on minorities. You'll go ahead and go to Insert, go to Chart, and then you'll go ahead and see this pop up, and you want to choose Pie Chart. So you go to Chart Type, scroll down, Pie. Under the data range, select F3 through F9. Go ahead and click OK. All right. This will pull in the percentages for the occupation. To make sure that we have labels so we can identify what occupations we are showcasing. Choose B3 through B39. So go ahead and go here to add a label. Okay. Now this is a lot of data, and you may not want to highlight it all, but you can adjust the data range so that maybe you are highlighting the most diverse occupations. Since we sorted out our spreadsheet, we know this can be the data from F30 to F39. Using Google Sheets to visualize data is one example on how to make this data more accessible. There are many resources out there, including, but not limited to, Data Wrapper, Tableau, Venngage, and Canva. We are happy to help provide additional resources if needed after this call.
So that's kind of, in a quick high-level overview of how really to explore the demographic data. Of course, this data kind of lends itself to allow you to do as much and as little analysis as you're looking to do. It depends on your question and what you're trying to answer, and that will determine what your analysis is going to be. So we're going to go ahead and jump into some questions that we have received prior to the webinar. And again, if you have any questions about specifics, not only within this demographic data, but maybe about the tool, go ahead and throw those in the chat window. So one of the questions was really focusing on, how can we use this data knowing that our region didn't participate fully in collecting the data? Well, that's okay. Actually, our data comes from national sources, as Sam had mentioned. MZ is our data partner and provides us the data. So our data will also come from the census, IRS forms for the nonprofit data, so you don't really actually even have to provide any data to us because we're getting it already from these national data sources. So you can use this data and know that it's accurate because we're, again, pulling it all from that national source. One of the other questions we had was, how to define the diversity in the creative sector and how its impact can be captured in data and that analytics. So, diversity can come, that is a broad definition that I don't know that we are capable of answering to how you define it. We can just give you these tools, this data, for you to kind of define that diversity within your own. Here, we're talking about diversity as, those minority populations, but, you could also consider diversity as also in gender and age. It really just depends on what you're looking to do. And then that will determine how you can use this data. So this data is available when you have a CVSuite subscription. And again, it's available for state, MSA, and county level. So you can pull that data and really answer that question. So one of the questions was how to gather this data and translate it into effective communication tools. What we find, is there's a lot of, as we were going through this, we were just kind of finding a lot of data, and this can be a lot to represent. So picking out those high-level talking points that you really want to capture as your whole story, and then making those visualizations to match that data. So you're really not only capturing the data in a meaningful way and sharing it so it's digestible, but also creating a story that goes with it. So you don't only want these data points. We've heard from lots of legislators and people in the past that this, the data can only take you so far. You still have to have that full picture story to really make the case for these data points. There's a question about dividing the occupations by a hierarchy group, and I'm not sure I quite understand. We just provide the SOC codes, so we don't necessarily have any kind of ranking within the occupations. So if you're looking, like to see the data maybe by like directors or lower level and that kind of sense, that wouldn't be something necessarily that we can provide, but our data partner may be able to have some information on that, MZ. And then the last question was really about the differences between AFTA, the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study, and CVSuite data. So the CVSuite data includes, again, data from every year, and it's not really it's not a study. It's data that you can access through our online tool. We include, more data than that study. If you would like some more information specifically about how we're different than AFTA, we can definitely provide you that and give you more information.
Okay, so it looks like that's going to conclude all the time that we have for today as far as our questions in our webinar go. As we mentioned earlier, we will address all the questions on the blog. And we'd like to thank anyone who joined us today for this webinar, and we really look forward to hearing from you in the future. On the slide, we've listed some additional articles and resources around the value of diversity in the creative workforce, and we will list these on our blog as well. So you can see these links and read through any of the resources if you're interested. We really hope that you gained valuable insight into how to use the data in a better and better understand the use of the Creative Vitality Suite. Again, if you have any questions or need any more information about the tool, please contact us at CVSuite@westsoft.org or by phone 303-629-1166, and we'll get all of your questions addressed. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day.